Thank you very much. Thank you for the warm welcome. So what I've been given to talk about is the future of connected digital twins. Now, I don't have a crystal ball and I don't do predictions, so talking about the future of connected digital twins is maybe not quite something that I can really do. However, there are some things which I can talk about which are in relation to the future of connected digital twins. I think one starting point would be to talk about what we mean by connected digital twins, and maybe more particularly what we've learnt we mean by connected digital twins. Because on the journey on the National Digital Twin Programme, we've learnt a lot. And then also, on the same lines of the kind of the lessons learnt, what we've learnt so far is really needed in a connected digital twin programme at a national level. And so this is, in many ways, is a condensed learning from the National Digital Twin Programme that I'd like to run through quite briefly. And then at the end, just a little bit about what's happening now and where things seem to be going at the moment in the UK. So that's how I propose to do it. Kicking off with what on earth do we mean by connected digital twins? And a good place to start on that would be to do with digital twins themselves. And it does seem like there's still a lot of argument about what a digital twin actually is, and I don't want to get into that argument because I don't think it's actually very helpful. I think it's more helpful to be able to describe digital twins well rather than to come up with a perfect definition. But there are some principles which seem to be emerging as common themes, consensus built around them, that people are generally bought into. And I think the biggest one is that for a digital twin, you've got to have this two-way connection between the physical world and the digital world. And so you've got data going one way, and you've got interventions coming back the other way. And we see that when you do take data from the physical world into the digital world, generally you've got to do something with the data. It's no good as it starts. You've got to generate the insights, and so there's all the modelling that's needed. You're doing something clever with the data to get something of higher value than the original data, the insights, leading to the better decisions, and then those decisions can drive the interventions. The interventions back in the real world hopefully lead to better outcomes. Now, I think that flow of words doesn't actually depend on digital twins. I think it's been around with us for ages. I think it's probably as old as the hills. You know, we need to take data from the physical world, generate insights to make better decisions, to have some kind of intervention. So I would put it to you that digital twins are not just a fad. I don't think they're even just a technology. I think digital twins are a means of integrating technology. I think digital twins are more of an approach to how we use data, generate insight, make decisions, and do the interventions. And what I'm going to talk about in just a moment is that therefore we can have many different types of digital twins for many different purposes. But first I want to show how digital twins can be used to integrate all sorts of other technology. And so we can be using the sensors, obviously sensor technology, to get information about the physical world, but then to start pushing it towards the digital world, we need our IoT and 5G. When it gets to the digital world, we need something pretty clever to manage that data, particularly if we're talking about large quantities of data from many different sources. And then inside the digital twin, we can see all sorts of clever stuff happening with AI and ML. And now you can see that I'm playing kind of technology buzzword bingo. And you are going to get a full house, I assure you. Because the next one around coming around is the visualization, because we humans need to look inside the digital twin to see what's going on. And so we've got AR, VR, MR. And then all sorts of interesting decision support tools. I saw Chris earlier, so I'm glad I mentioned decision support. And then when it comes to the interventions, you can imagine all sorts of different ways of doing the intervention. It could be that there's a human in the loop to do that intervention, or potentially we can imagine robotics. So there you go. I've pretty much said everything apart from blockchain. And yes, now I have said blockchain, and we could use that to help increase the trust somewhere along the line. So digital twins, more a means of integrating technology than being a technology in itself. And we can see that really at the heart of it, what digital twins are all about are making better decisions faster. That's where the value comes from. And we can see that key to that is information flow, getting the right information in the right hands at the right time to make the right decisions. We can see that information is a carrier of value, and that making better decisions is where that value is released. So that's what digital twins are really all about. But we can see that you can have digital twins of many different things. You can have digital twins of individual assets, or digital twins of processes, or digital twins of whole systems. Now, if we can have digital twins of processes, so just unpack that for a little bit, and you look at an organization, well, in many ways, an organization is a collection of processes. So you can have a digital twin of an organization, or a supply chain is a collection of processes, or logistics is processes. And so that means you can have digital twins of supply chains and logistics, and that therefore we shouldn't kind of constrain ourselves to thinking that digital twins are just about physical things. Oh, well, they are about physical things, but things in the real world. And then when it comes to the digital twin itself, it seems that there are three core components, three bits which keep on coming up. There is the data handling itself, but then usually at the heart of a digital twin is some kind of model which is giving us that insight. And those models can come in many different shapes and sizes. It could be agent-based models, could be physics-based models, could be any kind of models that any of you super clever people in this room can come up with. Digital twins usually have models in the middle. And then almost always there needs to be some kind of visualization. That visualization doesn't have to be a 3D thing, it could be a map, it could be whatever, and you could step inside it. So I'm trying to put across that there's many different types of digital twins for many different purposes. And I think that that word of purpose is unbelievably important in digital twins, because purpose should really drive everything about the digital twin. Purpose should drive the data refresh rate. Purpose should drive the fidelity of the model. Purpose should drive where the human is in the loop, or even if there isn't a human in the loop. But all of those are variables, in which case we can have lots of different types of digital twins. And that's why I think sometimes trying to come up with a single definition becomes exclusionary, where actually this should be quite inclusive. So that's an individual digital twin, and we can imagine that individual digital twin for all sorts of things. This is a train. And you can use a digital twin for helping to make better operational decisions about the train. So let's put that to one side over there and say we've got a digital twin for a train now, but we can also imagine having digital twin for the track and digital twin of signalling. And for that matter, you can have digital twin of the timetabling. Now, in the physical world, all of these things are connected together, obviously, because the train goes on the track, past the signals, etc. Now, what we mean by connected digital twins is making the connection in the digital world. Now, that connection is obviously a data flow. It's about information flow. And more often than not, it's an information flow across organizational and potentially sector boundaries. So if we want to crack this idea of connected digital twins, it's really all about information flow, secure, resilient information flow across organizational and sector boundaries. That's what it is. Now, I think it's much easier and much more fun in many ways to wave my arms and talk about how nice digital twins are and connected digital twins. It's really difficult to talk to people, maybe apart from this audience, about the importance of information management and data flows. But that's really what it is about underneath the hood. Most people don't want to look under the hood, they just want to jump in the car and drive it. But that's what it's about. I think that this then is really important if we kind of zoom it out to a systems level. And the National Digital Twin Programme was focused on the built environment. Where it's going now seems to be into many other sectors. That's a really good thing, because everything that we've learned is totally applicable in other sectors too. But our lessons were from the built environment. The built environment is a system of systems. So we've got our economic infrastructure, energy, transport, water, waste, telecoms. Each of those are complex interconnected systems. But then those are serving our social infrastructure, hospitals, prisons, schools, residential, commercial, industrial buildings that make no sense unless they're served by the economic infrastructure. And all of that has some kind of interface with the natural environment. And all of that is then joined together in our built environment, which I just kind of put to you is the most amazing machine that we humans have ever built, and we live inside it. And very often we don't see it because it's so close to us. But it is absolutely amazing. But the thing is, we don't often see the system, or we don't understand the system, we don't intervene on the system very well in order to get to better outcomes. But that's what we need to do. And if we look at the processes related to that system of systems, then really they're all joined up. I think the most important process is the use, because it's from the use that we get the benefit. It's all about the services that the built environment can provide. Very often use gets left off process diagrams on the built environment, but it's the most important one. And then in order to make the built environment available for use, we need the operation and maintenance. Those go on forever. They're forever processes. For as long as we want our built environment to serve society, those need to happen. And then every now and again, as an intermittent kind of thing, we do some kind of intervention. We do some planning, some design, some construction, and some commissioning to add a new asset into the system. But very often the way that we look at it is as if the project is the most important thing. I'd put it to all of us that actually a project, super important as projects are, and I won't have a word said against projects, they're a great way of getting stuff done, but they're really just interventions on the system. And the system matters, because it's the system that delivers the outcomes we want. We said that digital twins are all about making better decisions faster. That's the point of digital twins. And the decisions sit in processes. So every single one of those processes on that diagram, on that infinity loop, have decisions in. So you can imagine digital twins for every single one. A digital twin for better use decisions, for better operation decisions, better maintenance decisions. I could go on, but I think you've got the pattern now. Every single one becomes a use case for a digital twin in every single sector, for every single asset. So you see what happens inside my brain when I think about use cases. They multiply out and you can see them everywhere. But they should be driven by purpose, and for where I'm just about to go, with the ecosystem of connected digital twins, we should really only do each digital twin on purpose and each connection on purpose. We shouldn't try and connect everything up to everything, just because we can, although we can't, but we shouldn't do that. We should do it on purpose because it matters and we're doing it intentionally. And so what happens when we look at this slightly washed out version? So I'm drawing a digital world on top of our built environment system of systems now. And lots of different digital twins all around the place. Some in transport, some in energy, some in water. And then thinking, it makes sense, doesn't it, to join them up? And so now we can easily imagine an ecosystem of connected digital twins. Now that's what we mean by the national digital twin. We don't mean a massive model of everything. What we mean is federation. Digital twins talking to each other. Okay, so that's what connected digital twins are. What did we learn on the program? And I'm going to scoot through this relatively quickly. I've basically got one slide for each of these points. But we summarised them all in the Gemini papers. I'd commend those to you. Just Google them. They're really good. They're on the CDBB website. But what we learned as probably the most important things about a national level programme to advance connected digital twins are these things, which don't seem very technical. So forgive me for that. I will mention one technical thing, but most of them are not really. So, outcomes focused. If we believe that digital twins are all about purpose, then we kind of need to know what is the big purpose, what is the big why, what is the reason why we want to do connected digital twins. And I think that means we need to have a vision. We need to have something coherent to know what we're aiming for. And this vision for the built environment, I think, really cracks it. It says that we should see the built environment having a purpose, that purpose being to enable people and nature to flourish together for generations. You know, that's something I would sign up to. I want to do that. I want to be part of a built environment industry that is doing that. So that's the kind of the big why, the big purpose. When it comes to being purpose-driven, I think you've probably seen this. You know all about Credo. Credo is amazing. We need to have demonstrators. We need to start doing things, because it's only when you start doing them that you learn the lessons. And I can see there's a number of people in the room who have been involved in Credo. Thank you. Your involvement was amazing. We learned so much. But an awful lot we learned was not just the technical stuff. It was on the kind of the socio side. But it has to be purpose-driven. The reason for putting up these images is that we tried to tell the story of the purpose, to make it accessible to ordinary people, and told the story in terms of Grandad and how you can use connected digital twins to make better climate change decisions. But it's got to matter. It's got to have a purpose. It needs to be systems-based. I think I've maybe overemphasized the system already, but starting with those outcomes, Ultimately, hopefully, SDGs, we're going to get those, but we need aligned outcomes all the way down to the local outcomes for local projects. But in order to get outcomes from our built environment, we need to kind of understand the model and how it fits together. And what I'd put to you is that it's to do with the systems and the services that come from those systems. And the kind of natural, the services come from natural systems, the air that we breathe, the water we drink, the food that we eat. We can kind of understand those. The services that come from the built systems, we're familiar with, but we don't normally think about them as services. So you can consider mobility as a service. You can consider kind of accommodation as a service. And so I think it's really healthy, actually, to see our built environment as a service, and it's the services that deliver the outcomes, in which case we need to understand the processes and drive the improvement. So, and one thing I did want to say on this was that it means that we need to understand those systems better and intervene more effectively. That's what connected digital twins enable us to do. That's actually the reason for me sharing that. This socio-technical point. There's an awful lot of wonderful technical work that needs to be done. There's so much research in order to kind of firm up that cycle that I showed, from physical to digital and back again. And then what we should notice is that it doesn't stop there, does it? It keeps going round because the intervention has some kind of effect, so we kind of keep going around that circle. So there's a lot of technical stuff, there's a lot of research. At the heart of making this secure information flow, I think is a need to have consistent high-quality data models, to have shared reference data, to have common access and security protocols. All of that kind of stuff is hard technical work. So I'm not in any way saying technical isn't important. It is massively important, but it's not enough. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. Because what we've learned is that the social side is at least as important and probably harder. So on Credo, it took us 6 months to get the legal agreement signed, leaving the technical guy 6 months to do amazing work. And so on the social side, there's all the stuff about commercial solutions, legal solutions, regulatory solutions, upgrading skills and capabilities, ethics. If we don't address that, then this whole thing doesn't work. So I would say that we need to see this through a socio-technical lens, but also beyond that, actually to see it as socio-technical change, because we're on a journey, we're on a move, there's somewhere we want to get to, we're not there yet, and so we need to see it in terms of change. We need to have a clear roadmap. We need to have a clear theory of change. And you can't read it, but if you have a look at the Gemini papers, you'll see that. These are important things, but they're not technical. It needs to be values guided. I think this is unbelievably important for a connected digital twin program at a national level, because we want the connected digital twins to be good. They aren't necessarily good. They could be used for ill, and therefore we need to be very, very intentional from the beginning that connected digital twins are used for good. At the heart of that is trust. If they're not trusted, then they won't work. You see purpose in there as well. All of this summarized in the Gemini principles. But I think just to underline the importance of the values in this, I don't think that good connected digital twins are the default setting. I think we have to fight for good connected digital twins. We need to build on ethics because there are other default settings. And so I really emphasize this. Community enabled. Because of these connections across organizations, across industries, across sectors, this really has to be a pretty big collaborative exercise. Collaboration, joining people together is huge. And so being community enabled, we see as being absolutely key. Part of that was forming the Digital Twin Hub. The whole idea of that was to bring together people who care about digital twins, people on the supply side, on the demand side, basically to build a community to learn by doing and progress by sharing. And that was the motto that we chose. The Digital Twin Hub has now been taken over by the Connected Places Catapult. They've got all sorts of fantastic plans for it. It's really good that it's now connected to the Catapult network. It's not just the Connected Places Catapult. There's also the Digital Catapult, the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, the Energy Systems Catapult. all of them very active in driving this community forward. And very soon, I think it might even be within a week, the strategic board for the DT Hub is going to be announced, which is pretty exciting. One little tiny point more on the community enabled. All the way through the National Digital Twin Programme, when it was being run out of CDBB, we found that there was this debate about whether the whole approach should be top-down or bottom-up. And the bottom-up kind of argument was, let 1,000 flowers bloom. You know, the best way of progressing here is just let everyone do their own thing. Just go off and just try some stuff, and something good will appear. And there's clearly benefit in that, but it also sounds a little bit like chaos, and it might not get to the right answer quickest. And then there's the top-down view of people saying, no, get some experts in a room who really know what they're talking about, and they can work out what the answer is, and then tell everybody, and everyone has to do it. And that sounds a bit authoritarian and probably doesn't work. And so this argument has moved kind of backwards and forwards over the last 3 years. My view on it is that we need both, and they should both be done at the same time, and it should be part of the community, and it should be part of the collaboration, because yes, we do need experts in a room who know what they're talking about, but yes, we also need people out there in the industry just trying it. And so I think what we need to do in this space is collaborate on the rules so we can compete on the game. I think that's what should guide us. Okay, that was a bit of a breakneck run through everything we've learnt in 3 years, but hopefully it's come across to you. It's not all technical. It is outcome-focused, purpose-driven, systems-based, values-guided, socio-technical, community-enabled, and I bet you want a Pepsi now, because, yes, some people remember that advert. Okay, so what's happening now? So what's happening now is a lot of stuff. We see the market in digital twins absolutely going crazy. It's a really hot market. And I'll come back to that in a moment as to how you deal with a hot market. It all got kicked off, I think, this idea of connected digital twins at a national level in Data of the Public Good, which came out 5 years ago. And since then, we've had policy support in transforming infrastructure performance from the IPA, but also in the National Infrastructure Strategy, in the National Data Strategy, and also in the Integrated Review. It's an amazing array of really high-level policy support. So, you know, from a government point of view, this stuff has to happen, and I believe it will. But there's an awful lot of stuff going on in an awful lot of places. I think it's incredibly important to actually bring them together, because there's the work in academia. Now, I hope you'll forgive me for putting DAFNI in other key players. DAFNI is huge in this whole space, but I think when it comes to driving forward the idea of connected digital twins, we probably see the work of the Alan Turing Institute kind of really grabbing hold of that and having a specific program to drive it. But basically, there's an awful lot of activity in research on digital twins and connected digital twins. In government, there's ongoing work in CPNI on the National Digital Twin Programme. They're driving what is emerging to be a really exciting demonstrator. I hope I'm allowed to say where it is, but maybe I'm not, so I won't. I'll be careful. They're driving a really interesting demonstrator, which is pulling together some real key players that I can assure you would recognise them. So that's exciting. That's seeing how the demonstration is continuing. That looks like it's properly funded, as is the development of the information management framework to support it. That's not the only thing around government, though, because pretty much all of the big spending departments are interested in digital twins, whether that's transport digital twins in DFT, or energy digital twins in BEIS, or water digital twins in DEFRA. There's a lot of activity in government in this space. And then in industry, I already mentioned the work of the Digital Twin Hub. That's specifically trying to bring together the owners, the people who will own digital twins, and solution providers, advisors, investors, etc. The catapult's key in there. And so what I'm trying to draw here is a picture that is maybe more distributed than it was when the Centre for Digital Britain was leading the programme. You know, there's more going on in more different places. And I think that it's really important that it should be joined up so that we have a distributed, connected model rather than a fragmented model. I think what it means at a national level is that we need to have a shared roadmap so that all the players here are sharing their roadmaps, and that those actually add up to a roadmap that makes sense, and that we have a narrative at a national level that makes sense and also makes sense at the lower level. I think those things are really important. So to get that, I think it needs some convening, connecting and coordinating. I don't think this is about command and control. I'm sure that wouldn't work. But across this kind of landscape, which is very exciting, I think it needs a little bit of leadership to drive that convening, connecting, coordinating. And so what I'd end with, I've got one slide and then I'll end. I think there is a potential fly in the ointment, and I mentioned how hot the digital twin market is at the moment. So for individual digital twins, it's unbelievably hot. So you know, if you had a startup and you wanted to make some money, it might be too late because there's an awful lot of really exciting players in that market. And there's also some snake oil salesmen, and you know, the usual thing when a market goes too hot. But that's a market in individual digital twins. What I see is that it's quite difficult to drive the connection between them because that needs the collaboration, it needs the collaborating on the rules piece of it. Now that's the thing that worries me. So I can imagine two potential market failures that would be very worrying. And the first one is a federation failure, a failure to federate. I think if we miss this opportunity to get digital twins to talk to each other, we will have missed the ability to unlock so much value for the people in this country, but more broadly. You know, all the outcomes that we talk about become harder if digital twins can't talk to each other. The other one I worry about is actually an ethical failure, and this would be the connected digital twins not being used for good, being used for ill. We can imagine other parts of the world where that might be the case. And I said, I don't think the default setting is good, so we have to make it good by putting energy into the system. So those are my two worries, and what I wanted to end on was something a little bit more positive, which was to say that the future is federated. I think that's the future of connected digital twins. It's federated, and it's federated at two levels. It's technically the connection between digital twins, but also at a human level. It's the connection between people and organisations to enable it. So with that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Actually, Mark, you might like to stay up because we have some questions for you, if that's okay. Can I encourage people to add their questions to the Slido? I've got a few questions to start, and maybe we can pick up the ethics one because that was your penultimate slide. So there's a question about, you talked about ethics, but can you please give an example of how a digital twin might be used for bad purposes?
Yeah, it's not a very nice subject, is it?
Oh, I know.
So, what I like to talk about is that report that started off, you know, data for public good. I massively believe in that. I'm personally hugely motivated by that. You know, that's what made me want to be involved in the programme. And my observation throughout the whole programme is that has actually brought people together because so many of us are motivated using data for public good. So that's the good bit. But the question was, what's a bad one? It would be possible to use data for public bad. It would be possible to use data to control people. You know, the amount that people can know about others is pretty scary. And so, you know, we can imagine some authoritarian regimes where you really wouldn't want them to be able to connect data from a number of different sources to know what you're up to. Or infer anything about your activities. Like you just wouldn't. And so I think the comparison is using data for public good versus data for public control. I think data for public control is really, really bad. We don't want to go there. I think that there is another failure the other way, which is using data for private gain. And we can imagine other parts of the world that are very happy to use data to make millions for a very small number of people. I don't think that's great either. And so I can imagine a number of different dystopias of using data for purposes which are not great, data for public control or data for kind of private good. I think we therefore seriously have to work out how to make it that in this small island we use data for public good. I'm sure it's not a default.
No, it's great, and plus it reminds us to think about the counterfactual, so that if we don't do this, then the so what, and that's so important. So yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, one interesting counterfactual is that it might actually be better to have that federation failure. You know, if we were worried about the federation not ending up good, it might be better to leave it as a mess. And by the way, I don't believe that. I believe it's much better to sort it out, to make federation work, but to use it for good. And maybe I'm coming across as a little bit jokey on this. I'm not. This is serious stuff. Yeah, this really has to happen.
Okay, good. Next question, if I may. So the one that's gone to the top of the list at the moment is, Mark, would it be possible to see practical applications of digital twins with closed loop? So I think this is referring to the getting the data out, but also actuating something in the real world system?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And there are practical applications. I mean, it'd be good to have a poke around the DT Hub, because there are increasingly more and more of good case studies in there. And actually, I would encourage you to turn up for the Gemini calls. They happen 10:30 on every Tuesday, and there are case studies nearly every week. Some of them have a closed loop, some of them don't. But increasingly, there are closed loop examples. I think to have a fully closed loop, it's not just about having the intervention coming from the digital world back into the physical world. It's also seeing the effect of the intervention and then taking it back around the loop again. You know, that's a proper closed loop.
It just reminded me of two things we talked about, because as being part of the Digital Twin Hub when we were developing it, we talked about air traffic control. And of course, you know, planes, you know, we get the messages from the planes to say, here I am, and then the air traffic control people then direct them where they need to be safely. So that's sort of closed loop example. Right, so the next one we have is a very exciting innovation, Mark. What did you see as the biggest blocker to progressing digital twin technology? What does the market need? The most help with?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Very good, yeah.
I think that the biggest blocker are humans, because we generally are the ones that get in the way of most stuff. And I presented the whole thing of it being seen as a socio-technical change program. I really do think it's the socio side of that is the hardest bit. The technical stuff we can solve. We know we can. We've got really clever people who can solve it. They just need to be allowed to do it. So I think that the biggest blocker, the hardest bit, is actually on the social side. And you know, right up front, that is convincing ministers that they need to invest in this. You know, that's a social side part of this. But you know, I don't want to kind of lay blame at ministers' feet on this and say, you know, it's them. It's all of us. You know, there's various different things that we put in the way of making this happen. So that second part of the question, you know, what does the market need most help with? I think what the market needs help with is the federation bit, because it's very difficult for an individual player in the market to come up with the thing that federates with everyone else in the market. And there isn't a lot of incentive to do that. It's like if they've got a really good solution, why wouldn't they want their solution to be the one that everyone else uses and you know, trying to develop a monopoly? But that's not the right answer. So I think what the market needs is help to bring the market together to get this solution. Our observation is that pretty much every player we've talked to in the market wants the solution that they can share with, because they see that there would be a bigger pie. Everyone wants it, but they can't make it on their own. They need somebody to help them to kind of convene it, to do that collaboration on the rules. That's what the market needs, and that's the biggest thing.
Okay, great. And I've just perhaps one last one, if I may, and then there might be more questions on the panel later. So it's a bit of a rhetorical question. This is: would you agree that the biggest risk to federation failure is the lack of mutual understanding of the requirements of the actors in the system.
Yes.
Okay, easy. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so can we clap again for Mark? Thank you very much.